Hi everyone, my name is Robbie Blackhurst and I'm founder and director of Compliance Chain, which is a sister company of the Kier Partnerships Framework and Advanced Social Value. I'm delighted today to be joined on this call by Dan Billinge, who's Head of Procurement at BAM, and Gerard Cox, who's Procurement Director at Kier. We had over 300 register for this event today. I think we're around 120 now who have signed in. But the idea of today really is to get a bit of an understanding from a subcontractor supplier level. What are the requirements for working with tier one principal contractors? And two people who are no better placed than to give us that insight, Dan and Gerard. So thank you both for joining us on today's call. The way the call is going to work, we've got roughly an hour. I'm going to start off by some very brief presentations. Gerard's going to go first, give us a little bit of an insight into Kier and some of the values that are required to work upon Kier supply chain, followed by Dan. And I want to finish off for a very short 4-minute presentation about Compliance Chain and what that does. We have a whole host of questions that have been submitted as part of the process of registering for this event. So I've got over 300 questions here. We won't get through them all, but I've gone through them already prior to this call and picked through some of the pertinent ones that I think are applicable to most people on the call. And I think it's fair to say, what the requirements are and what the processes are for the likes of BAM and Kier will be very similar across other tier one principal contractors. So we can have a little bit of a chat in the round about that too. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Gerard to give us a little bit of an overview of Kier.
Right, thanks Robbie, and thanks for the invitation today. So Kier is quite a large group made up of a number of different businesses. So I thought it worthwhile spending just a few minutes explaining the structure of the business and what we all do. So Kier Group comprises 4 businesses. Kier Construction is the largest element, and that's got a turnover of circa 1.6 billion, and I'll expand a little further on that in a later slide. Then we have our natural resources, nuclear and networks business, which works on projects right across the water, energy and telecom sectors. So that will include things like water treatment plants, distribution, power stations and power distribution of fibre broadband. Then we have Kier Property, which invests and develops mainly commercial, industrial and retail schemes right across the UK. And then finally, Transportation, which focuses on local and national highways, rail, aviation and ports. So altogether, the group turnover is circa 3.5 billion, with a forward order book of circa 10 billion. Next slide, thank you. So our stated aim or purpose is to sustainably deliver infrastructure which is vital to the UK, and our values of being collaborative, trusted and focus underpin this. So by collaborative, we mean we work closely with clients and stakeholders to reach innovative solutions. Trusted to us means that we deliver what we promise, we act safely and ethically, and we care for the environment and communities which we work in. And finally, by being focused, we are disciplined and thorough in how we work and deliver for our clients and customers. Next slide, please. Thanks. So looking at the construction business in a little more detail, which is the part of the business I work for and the one that you'll be most interested in. We have 4 regional businesses, which you'll see coloured up on the adjacent map, plus Kier Places, which undertakes planned and reactive maintenance. And finally, major projects, which undertakes more specialist, complex and high value contracts, such as laboratories and prisons. And both those businesses work nationally. So combined turnover of all those businesses in the construction business itself is 1.5 billion, and we deliver over 170 projects each year. We operate through a network of approximately 40 offices and focus on a number of key sectors and clients, specifically the MOD, MOJ, healthcare, education and commercial. So that makes us one of the UK's leading regional builders, with circa 70% of that work coming from the public sector.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thanks, Gerard. Dan?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. My name's Dan Billinge. I'm Head of Procurement for BAM UK and Ireland, working specifically for the construction segment, which I will I'll move on to. So a little bit about BAM first. Operating for nearly 150 years, and I said the UK and Ireland division, working on infrastructure and construction projects and creating many of the country's iconic buildings throughout. We are part of the larger Royal BAM Group, which are one of the largest construction companies in Europe, with a group turnover of circa 7 billion. Our aim is to leave our world a better place than we found it, to build a more sustainable tomorrow, which is currently our company catchphrase. We do this by connecting, building and maintaining places where people and the planet prosper together. And this is our lasting legacy. See some key statistics on the bottom. So from a BAM UK and Ireland perspective, our turnover is circa 3 billion, part of the group-wide 7 billion. With over 6,500 employees in the division, we are split into 4 segments, which I will move on to on the next slide, with an aspiration for achieving net zero by 2026. Next slide. We like to create thriving communities, working in partnership with public and private sector clients, developing, designing, building and maintaining buildings and the infrastructure which make a real difference to people's lives. The 4 segments that the BAM UK and Ireland division is split into is the construction segment, again, which is where I head up the procurement and supply chain teams. We also have the civil engineering segment, previously also known as BAM Nuttall's, and they turn over circa 1 billion. The construction business is around about 950 million. And also working closely with BAM Ireland, turnover about 500-600 million, and the remaining is from our ventures business, which is a range of support services which support life cycle of the buildings, including some of the infrastructure as well. Next slide, please. Finally, I was at BAM. It's about the values and what we say at the heart of everything we do, and how we innovate and how we interact. So our 5 values are that we are reliable, we deliver what we promise with a focus on quality. We are inclusive, so we always seek out new perspectives and take inspiration from inclusion. We are sustainable and responsible for building a sustainable tomorrow, and that drives us forward. We will specifically identify clients that follow this specific value along with all the others. We are collaborative, we listen, we include communities, colleagues, clients, and the supply chain in our decisions, because together we thrive. And finally, we like to take ownership, because we know the great outcomes start with taking responsibility and pride in our work. Thank you. You're on mute, Robbie.
There we go. Perfect. First one of the day. My name is Robbie Blackhurst. I look after compliance chain. And just to give a little bit of an overview, it's quite good actually that both Dan and Gerard identified collaboration within company values, because effectively compliance chain is an online platform that joins up clients, principal contractors, and their supply chain. So what principal contractors and clients do through compliance chain is they effectively use the system to manage their supply chain, to deliver social value, to project manage with their projects, and also calculate embedded carbon upon their schemes. The area that obviously you're interested in today is how contractors use compliance chain to manage their supply chain. So the first function. So supply chain members, subcontractors and suppliers are registered into the compliance chain system. Soon as you're registered in the system, it kind of puts your company on the map, to use the strap line and the first image on the left. That then allows you to build a company dashboard and prove compliance against competency areas. And also on the right, you'll see there's a key contact page. So effectively, buyers can get contact, whether they be principal contractor buyers or end user clients, direct with your guys in terms of delivering work. Depending on the area of level that you sign up for compliance chain, you get accredited against different levels. So obviously you see bronze level will take you up in terms of financial information, supplier identity, third-party accreditations. Silver starts to get a little bit more complex in terms of health and safety, business and professional standing, and you move through gold and platinum. This isn't a hard sell, this call. No, we're not trying to flog anything. And the reason why we're not trying to flog anything, I just want to make you aware of the free bronze membership. So if you are a member you can sign up to compliance chain tomorrow, have access to the system, and it's absolutely free if you select bronze membership. It's not even one of them cons where you put your card details in, you get charged 3 months later. It is absolutely free to sign up as a bronze level membership. Also, that comes with other benefits. So around the accreditation process, if you're a bronze level member, the first thing and the most important thing is, as soon as you're registered and verified, public and private sector buyers will be able to see your company and see your profile. We normally calculate verification takes 48 hours from submitting the initial paperwork. You can also upload any third-party accreditations into the dashboard, which will then reduce tendering time through pre-qualification. As you move up through silver and gold, obviously there's other benefits that come from that, including direct access to tender opportunities. But as a bare minimum, we always say it's good to get your company in the platform as a bronze level membership for free. Some of the partners who are currently using Compliance Chain to do just that, detailed on the screen. And then there's a little video here in terms of how your platform would look. So if you were a buyer on a supplier on Compliance Chain, this would be your first page that you'd see in terms of information, everything to do with the sectors or the areas that you deliver in. You've then got your company dashboard that you'll be able to go into, and within the company dashboard, you'll be able to check your compliance levels and upload relevant information that's required. There's a financial due diligence check, which you have the option to turn on and off, which allows other third parties, and mainly, let's say third parties, the private sector clients and public sector clients, to view any financial due diligence information. Third party accreditations can be uploaded in there, and probably more importantly, contact information to allow you guys to be found. Last slide from me in terms of this is how then our public sector and private sector clients and principal contractor partners find you. They will have their own bespoke dashboards, but then within that they can go to the search suppliers section, which is in the top left hand of the dashboard. This will bring up all the suppliers that are registered within the Compliance Chain platform. They can then go on and search by company category, organisation size, level of Compliance Chain. But probably what's more important now to our contractors is making sure that they're employing local subcontractors to the projects that they're delivering. And what the Compliance Chain platform effectively lets you do is do searches by postcode of the project and bring up suppliers that are really local to the projects that they're delivering. A big challenge in the public sector at the minute in terms of delivering that. In terms of costs, obviously the bronze level membership is free, which we've discussed. So anybody who is interested in registering and getting their company visible within the Compliance Chain dashboard, if you just go to compliancechain.co.uk, little button at the top that says join, and just obviously select bronze membership, which will take you through to the registration page for free. So that's it in terms of presentation. So got through all three in 15 minutes, which gives us the rest of the time to get stuck into some of these questions. I'll start with the obvious question, really, that must have come through 60 times out of the 300 questions that we were asked, and it was around specific requirements. You know, what are the specific requirements or the bare minimum requirements that are required to work upon your supply chain? We'll start with Gerard.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question. So the industry's quite rightfully been criticised in the past for a huge number of potential clients like ourselves, all asking the same sort of questions, but in a slightly different way of the supply chain, and then asking those questions over and over again. So Build UK did a lot of work a couple of years ago to produce what's called the Common Assessment Standard, which is an industry agreed set of standard PQQ questions. So we try and keep it simple as possible. We're fully supportive of that approach because it's much more efficient for the whole supply chain as well as ourselves. So our primary requirement is for the business to hold the Common Assessment Standard. So it's a standard approach, ticks all the primary boxes in a single action. What that would do then is essentially qualify you for like a long list, if you like, from which then we would then undertake project-specific selection to assess how closely your business would align with the needs of the specific needs of the project. So that's in terms of overall capability, geographical coverage, considering any requirements that might be to use local businesses. We would then look at things like capacity at the time of peak demand and your general resource levels. Look at our trading history together, that's really important, and your performance levels, and then things like financial status, etc. But the baseline tick in the box is the Common Assessment Standard.
Dan?
I'm trying to add to that, to be honest. I think I think you touched on it in the introduction, Robert. There's a lot of similarities between our businesses. Likewise, BAM have adopted the Build UK Common Assessment Standard. We felt it was of benefit to the supply chain in order to not, if you work for BAM, it needs to be this recognised assessment body. If you work for multiple contractors, you might find yourself purchasing 4 or 5 different pre-qualification. So we are Build UK Common Assessment Standard approved, and as Gerard said, on a site-specific basis, there's multiple factors that come into play when we look at the geography, the specifics of the package that you'd be looking to tender for, whether there's any specific value that needs to be added on a specific project or within our business requirements surrounding environmental sustainability, social sustainability, all those sort of factors, as Gerard's also picked up on.
I'm glad you mentioned sustainability, because we have some questions on sustainability further down the line, but I'll come to them later. Just going back, Gerard, to one of the points you made in your answer to that question, you mentioned trade and history. Obviously, yep. we know that Kier, BAM, most principal contractors have got a preferred supply chain, but around kind of how open are the two businesses to obviously welcoming new incumbents onto the supply chain, and how difficult is it to break in?
Yeah, we it's a bit like, I use an analogy. If you've got a local football team and you selected your team on a Saturday and you win, the following week you're not going to start with a blank sheet of paper. You'd be crazy to. So we focus on using tried and tested supply chain, because that's how we sell ourselves, because that's the key way of managing risk, variation in performance. If you take a winning team from project to project, you should get more consistent outcomes. Saying that, at any point in time, you get various stresses and strains within the supply chain. So we're always on the lookout for where we may be overcommitting companies. You might find you've had a run of work which involves in situ concrete frames, and then you've got a load of projects coming through that have got steel frames. So that needs to be recognised, and then you make sure that you've got your supply chain options in place and they're all warmed up. So we do have an open door policy. But as I say, we focus on a preferred supply chain. Yeah, we're always interested in new entrants. We have a wide range of projects, small projects, large projects, and everything in between. So that there's plenty of opportunity. As I said, 170 to 200 projects a year, and we can literally cover the whole of the country. So we've got regional offices. So one of our strengths is that we've got local supply chains. It's not like we're pulling companies all over the country.
Cool, thanks. And just to reiterate on that, then, in terms of supply chain selection and growing your supply chain where there's a need. Say I'm sitting here now and I'm a subcontractor, and I'm thinking, you know what, I could add real value to that business, real value. How do I go about it? How do I go about getting in front of the right people, or putting that information in front of the people that will actually look at it?
Yeah. So at the end of this meeting, I'm happy to share who the key contacts are in each of our regions. So we've got the 4 regions, which we'll start with those. I can give you a contact in each of those to make initial contact with, and then depending on the scope of a particular company's field of operations, we might then narrow it down to one regional office, and that person can put you in contact there. And then it's just a case of finding the right forum. In many ways, it's a lot easier these days because everyone's spread all over the country. It's very easy to set up a half-hour Teams call with some key people in the team, and then use it as a shop window to tell us what you can do, what makes it different. And if that aligns with where we have a shortfall in our options, then there should be a good opportunity there. But what I'm quite keen on is that if we've got 20 bricklayers and we have no trouble keeping them busy, I don't want to give people false hope, and I'd expect the local teams to be quite honest about that.
Yeah, good, thanks. Dan, do you have anything on that in terms of I'm a subcontractor sitting here now and think I get real value to the BAM business? How do I go about it?
Yeah, firstly, I like the analogy Gerard put on the football team. It was we obviously we do have our preferred supply chain, always sort of understanding sort of local markets, whether again with a wide geography of projects. Our geography is slightly different. We have 5 regional businesses following a recent realignment of some of our regions. So Scotland, Northern region, Central, London and Western, which also captures the majority of Wales. So always on the lookout for local supply chain. We have a procurement manager in all of each of the regions, and they're regularly at Meet the Buyer events, looking at the local projects specific to the area in which those events are held. And it can be difficult in some of the works packages, but there's certainly opportunities in others, dependent on sort of that early engagement requirement, influence on design. But also to sort of add to that, we have to sort of keep up, and we're always looking at innovative products, new methods of working, whether that's logistics, whether that's any products that come to the market to reduce our programs and ultimately make a safer construction process, whether there's more carbon efficient products on the market. So we can't remain sort of still, we can't remain stagnant and just say we've got a supply chain, we stick with it. We have to constantly sort of keep that competition within our preferred, as well as sort of maintaining those relationships and understanding what the market is currently asking for. And we do have on our website an application for potential new supply chain partners. So I would suggest if anyone isn't currently on our supply chain and would like to be, that the form is completed, and we do try to get back to as many of those as we can, if not all. So if you do think you've got the right fit following sort of the similar values to the BAM business, then I'd certainly say to complete that form and get that sent to the email address on our website.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan. I'll stay with you, Dan, just to give you a go at a first question rather than go back to Gerard. In terms of challenges, so is there any common challenges that you see when working with your supply chain that just keep coming up? Stuff that comes up quite regular that you just think, we need a fix for this?
There's new challenges every week, I'd say. So yeah, there's obviously we've had it's no secret the last 2-3 years have been quite difficult when we look at inflation and the impact that's had specifically on the material cost. A lot of our projects in the construction business are on a sort of lump sum design and build. Thankfully, we don't have enter too many single stage tenders, but still that sort of contract, we execute a contract at day -10 and we start at the day 0, and then we spend 18 months trying to purchase in line with the cost plan that was set in, and as we know, inflation didn't exactly go to plan. So that's obviously been a key challenge over previous years. I think we have managed to navigate through the worst of that now, and I suppose now it's the focus potentially is shifting a bit more to labour and skilled labour and competent workforce, and trying to ensure that there's all the trades are captured, and we are engaging with young people as well, and getting how do we engage with get apprenticeships for roofers and those trades that we know we've got an aging workforce that in a few years' time we will start to struggle even more. So yeah, there's just a couple of examples really. There's plenty of challenges.
Gerard?
Yeah, so I totally agree. So recently it's been inflation, it's been insolvencies, and the labour shortages. But if I look at more normal conditions, the general challenges we have, looking at the specific question, working with subcontractors, there's internal and there's external. So if we look externally, I say consistency of overall performance is always a challenge. So when you go to like a McDonald's, love them or hate them, you know what you're going to get every time. And if we could get the same from our supply chain, that'd be brilliant. Labour churn, which is obviously related, is a challenge for us. And also being comfortable and open enough to have honest communications. We often hear about issues too late, when actually we could actually potentially assist and solve problems together. And then looking at some of the internal challenges, I'd say trying to get the business to engage early and really benefit from the wealth of expertise there is across our supply chain. Too often we like to keep the supply chain at arm's length for too long, and then by that time a lot of the key decision making and ability to influence has passed.
It's really good. That's really useful. It's interesting actually with that. We'll probably stick for a couple of minutes with some of the commercial elephants in the room that have come up. It seems that we've moved on to inflation around price fixing, not price fixing in that sense, in terms of subcontractors fixing their prices that they've tendered. What sort of time period do both Kier and BAM look for? Is it basically on a project by project basis in terms of subcontractors submit a price, you're getting the shoe around by the client who's delaying the start on site, and effectively the subcontract price moves, but then you've got to go back to the client and the client won't give you more money? Deal with them problems.
Yeah, it's
Anyone
been a
want to jump
massive,
in?
yeah, it's been a massive challenge. I mean, there were periods over the last 18 months where you either couldn't get a fixed price on structural steelwork, or it's for like a week or a month. I think the industry's learnt that there's no point just passing the risk down the supply chain, because you just get a whole round of insolvencies and no one benefits. So we're in the middle of all this. So we've had to be quite robust with our clients. We take on a degree of risk. We offset what we can down the supply chain in a reasonable way. But other than that, we've been pushing back, and most of the clients that we work with are pretty intelligent and appreciate what we're trying to do. So we've had a reasonable amount of success with that. But also there's various solutions that we can follow. Excuse me. We can follow, things like purchasing in advance. So we had a lot of success with purchasing steel in advance, reinforcement, for example. You don't need to know the detail of what you're buying, but you can make a commitment to a certain volume, and then you can get fixed prices to a degree, or hedging. So yeah, various mechanisms. But I think the mantra really is that the risk should sit with the person that's most able to control it.
It's just sticking with then some commercial questions around obviously fixing prices for periods of time. The other one that's come up a couple of times on the questions that have been submitted around insurances. I'll come to you, Dan, on this one. In terms of not having a carte blanche insurance level, and our insurances in terms of supply chain and subcontractor insurances picked on a project by project basis, or do BAM have an overarching mechanism that says every project has to have a certain level of insurance in terms of PI?
Good question. I mean, I'll just answer the last question, if that's okay, Robbie. In that when you asked about how long would you like the fixed price, I mean, ideally as a main contractor for 2 years, but that's obviously that from to just touching on obviously Gerard's view, we know that that's not possible because we do have those direct relationships with the manufacturers and suppliers, and understand that it's not quite as straightforward as that. And I think what just sort of when Gerard's touched on there about some of them contract terms and conditions, and how we are working more collaboratively amongst ourselves to try and ensure sort of that horizontal supply chain I talk about openly about, sort of clients, contractors, suppliers, subcontractors. It shouldn't be sort of every risk is just passed down, and we should just look to work together at how we can sort of share that risk, how we can sort of mitigate it. And Gerard used the example of early procurement, bringing whether we look to store something off site and double handle. Again, not the most efficient, but it has been a method that has been widely used. But I say hopefully now inflation can be a little bit more stable and more predictable moving forward.
Yeah, we're finding the material market has completely evened out, and some elements of it are actually dropping. What we're finding is that even though some of the commodity costs themselves are reducing, some of the manufacturers themselves of finished product are more reluctant to pass that on. So I think that will start flowing through. Now we're seeing parts of the industry quieten down a little bit. I think they'll be a bit hungrier, and because inflation may have receded, but that doesn't mean prices are necessarily falling. So and that's putting massive pressure on some of the projects. Some of them just become unviable. It's in no one's benefit to keep prices high.
Yep, good. Just to push you both on the PI question around insurances, because it has come up a couple of times. It seems to be that 5 million PI seems to be a standard that not just you two guys on the call, a number of principal contractors that we see 5 million, and what we're finding is that on certain packages 1 million PI probably fit the bill, but ultimately, because internal procedures say 5 million, that cost then for the subcontractor to go out and get extra PI cover to cover that is ultimately passed on to you and passed on to the client. How are you managing that?
It's a very good question, Robbie, and whoever raised it. It's not got a simple answer. I mean, in short, how is that decided? It is decided at main contract level. The contract T's and C's will dictate that each package will have a certain level of PI. Facades and roofing at the minute is obviously a key trade, and we have to try and work with our clients as best we can. We always look to our clients. I think 70% of our clients are repeat clients, which is great. We have that relationship upstream as we do downstream, and we are finding more and more that cover for 5 million PI, especially on facades, is doubling and tripling on an annual basis, and it's not sustainable. And you can't just go out and buy PI for the duration of the project. That then needs to be in place for the 12 years following that. So it's a very good question. I've not got the solution as yet. It's something that the industry needs to sort of come together with a solution. Obviously, as a main contractor, we have PI, but that cover is there in case anything was to sort of happen to us, and the warranties that get put in place between main contractors, subcontractors, clients are there to protect clients if anything was to happen to the likes of BAM Kier, which hopefully it won't, but it's a difficult one to really answer that. It's about that, again, for me, making sure that client, contractor, subcontractor are all talking in an open, collaborative manner.
We're finding the requirement for that level of PI is actually driven by the clients and their warranties, because a lot of their design packages will have a warranty attached to them, and the clients want that level of protection. It's also a requirement of our own insurance policies to keep the premiums at a reasonable level, that we can back off some of the risks down the supply chain. And of course, our projects are getting bigger and more complex. So our average project size now is about 20 million, but we do projects at below $1 million, and we do 250 million pound super prisons. So there is a degree of flexibility depending on the project.
I think the answer lies somewhere in between one of the earlier comments that you made, Gerard, around risk is best suited, or best to sit with the person who's best hold that risk. And I think, you know, it is education of clients, looking upstream at the clients and saying, actually, you're paying for this level of cover of PI from our subcontractor partner, and can it be reduced on a package by package basis based upon the advice that Kier give or BAM give, or any other principal contractor in that matter. But just moving on around cost, obviously evaluation tenders come in, you're evaluating them. Obviously, we're being in a real cost-driven market, or real competitive cost-driven market, particularly over the last 2 to 3 years. What other factors are important to both your organisations when reviewing subcontractor prices and subcontractor tenders?
Shall I jump in?
Dan?
Yeah. Good question again. So what is important outside of the cost? I mean, cost is obviously important. You've got to be sort of competitive. I suppose scope, understand, is that scope been fully understood? So within BAM, it's generally the commercial teams that will do those assessments on a project level, that will go out, send the inquiries out and do the assessments at a project level. Confession time, I did spend the first 15 years in industry as a QS at project level. Scope and ensuring everything is allowed for within that tender is fundamental and part and parcel of that as well. So it's that would always be sort of the first step to ensure that you've got that fully compliant bid. I think now we're seeing, when we talk particularly on the social value side, dependent upon the clients, but also dependent upon the contractor. We're currently about to launch sort of our new sustainability, social sustainability strategy that will put expectations on each and every project, regardless of a client. So previously, the clients might have dictated some of the social value expectations when how we measure them. But now we are looking to roll out our own model that will be applicable to all projects. So from a social value side, that's obviously key. I think, and then obviously the sustainability side, it's from a environmental sustainability. Is there any additional benefits for using a certain product over a different product? And then and finally, I think sort of that relationship. You know, people like working with people, and people want to continue those relationships as they can.
Gerard?
Yeah, totally agree. You've got to recognise that cost is always going to be critical, and even more so now with budgets being stretched. But increasingly, there's other factors that are either being driven by legislation, by client requirements or by our own requirements as a forward-thinking business that have to form part of the decision-making process. And the big thing at the moment is sustainability, you know, with a big S now, because it covers, you know, when I first joined the industry, it wasn't sustainability, it was environmental, and it meant skips. Well, now it's such a wide-ranging scope, it picks up so many other things, and we're being held to account more and more as businesses, and we have to better demonstrate that it does form part of our decision-making. And the key thing that I would encourage everyone on the call to do is just to make sure that your tender submissions aren't just a bills of quantity with a cover sheet. You need to be really showing us the additional value. You should be shouting about it so we can't ignore it and we can actually see it.
Let's just stick with that then in terms of sustainability, and you talk about the big S and the three pillars. I'd call them. Let's talk about social sustainability and social value and the importance of that. Like, I know from sitting in my chair the amount of pressure that's put on principal contractors to deliver demonstrable social value, the amount of pressure particularly from public sector clients, to the point where you can't do it on your own. You need the support of your supply chain to deliver some of them targets that are pushed upon you. How are you managing that, and how are you finding working with your supply chain to deliver some of these stringent social value targets? Gerard, you can go first. This one.
Yeah. One of the most common ones is, bearing in mind we've been speaking about the shortage of skilled labour in the industry, is about attracting entrants, and not necessarily just new entrants, but you know, maybe some more experienced people that have left the industry and potentially could come back. But supporting apprenticeships is a massive one. And that can support two agendas as well, because often they're local people as well. So you can really start seeing how companies like ourselves, when we're progressing a project in a particular area, we can actually leave a lasting legacy, and that's really tangible. And then when you start seeing some of these case stories, when you can see the impact it's actually had on you know, someone's lives, you know, it just keeps the energy levels up. And yes, it's a big part of our social agenda strategy.
Thanks, Dan. Just to elaborate on that, then, what sorts of things are you looking for from your supply chain to support you to deliver social value targets?
Yeah, I mean, just I suppose just within BAM, and I'm sure Kier will be the same, we have a team of probably 25, 30 social value managers across the business, which, as I'm sure you'll appreciate, that's a big investment. And that's just the sort of management and the advisors within the business that are out there working with the supply chain, really understanding some of the great things that are already being done. So that's sort of step one, really, capturing the good stuff we're doing around apprenticeships, working with the unemployed, any NEETs and the like. So there's and then the next step is, okay, so that's what's being done, and then we're capturing that, and then it's sort of looking to work with those SMEs that perhaps haven't had that experience, that might need that little bit of support, and upskilling them, advising them, connecting them in with any local social enterprises or any local charities that have got some guys out of work, that guys or girls that might want some opportunities to change their lives around, and some fantastic case studies internally that bring a smile to my face when I'm sort of reading some of the good things that we do. And when I say we, it's probably not BAM, it is supply chain partners, that they're providing opportunities to these people.
And just on that, going back to, if you link what you've just said with what Gerard said before around not just submitting a bill of quantities with the price on it, you know, I know from experience what would be really useful to principal contractors when they're getting subcontractor prices is some ideas in terms of how they can help support the principal contractor partners in terms of delivering social value within them communities. Sometimes what you find is that the supply chain partners know the community or the stringent factors of the community better than the principal contractor, and coming up with some social enterprises or some charities or some ideas. I think that'd go a long way if that was something that was appended to a bill of quantities when a tender submitted. Just sticking with obviously we've discussed social sustainability, we've just discussed economic sustainability. Probably the last one that obviously we haven't touched is the old school sustainability of environmental. And either of you can jump on this if you want to jump in. But obviously the drive to be carbon neutral by 2030, and where both of your companies are at with that in terms of the progress, and how your supply chain are helping you, or how new supply chain members can help you to achieve that.
So you might see it on my slide, we are have an aspiration for 2026. I am aware there's a lot of work to do. It can be a challenge. Our projects sometimes don't always allow us to achieve some of the measures that we can set out at a high strategic level. Some of the big infrastructure projects outside of construction as well. I mean, it's absolutely at the forefront for the 25-30 social environmental guys, social sustainability guys. We've got the team's about 45 in environmental sustainability. So again, massive investment, and whether that's looking at the emission of fossil fuels or no plastic on any of our sites, some of the sort of easy wins really that you'll see on any of the BAM projects as posters. You'll see some of the measurements shared across the canteens, just to sort of, as a sort of, we do need, again, it needs every single person involved in a project to help achieve some of these.
Gerard, just to come to you on exactly the same question, really, in terms of how are your supply chain or future supply chain, or how can future supply chain partners support you in delivering your sustainability aspirations?
Yeah, we're not been quite so ambitious as BAM. I checked earlier on. We've obviously got experts in the business. I'm not an expert, but we're targeting 2045 to be carbon neutral. At the moment, there's a huge amount of work going on to understand how we can measure, and I've got some concerns that around how the industry measures this, because no sooner have we all got together and agreed we're going to ask a standard question set for PQQs. I'm aware that we all measure our carbon emissions in different ways, so how clients can compare those, I don't know. So we've done a lot of work on measuring at the moment and putting in place protocols. We're focusing on those areas which we have direct control over, so our own emissions, and that's on our sites and in our facilities. We've obviously got a strategy for electric vehicles, and we're investing in infrastructure in our offices. We've looked at things like HVO fuels, synthetic fuels, which at one point looked like it was going to be the answer, but as we've looked into it, we're not quite so comfortable. So there's a lot of work going on. One of the biggest challenges is we're decades away from carbon and steel being able to contribute. They talk about reduced carbon, but you can never say they're low carbon at the moment. I think we're decades away from that, and often we have solutions, but we're involved too late in the process to really make a difference. So that's where the benefit, some of our frameworks start coming to play, where we actually can get involved early, sometimes from before planning stage, because the real answer is to actually design out waste before it even becomes a problem. You know, looking at the waste hierarchy. One of our biggest challenges is packaging. We're trying to eliminate packaging, but you have to remember that packaging has multiple purposes. It protects the product. It usually carries some sort of identification as well, so you know what the product is and the weight of it. But there are some smarter solutions out there which we need to be pushing the manufacturers to adopt more often. So rather than suspended ceiling tiles turning up in a cardboard box and wrapped in a plastic bag, you know, could we not use crates that are reusable? So and this is where I think the industry needs to work together to force change with some of these manufacturers. We can't, as big as we are, we can't do it on our own.
We can absolutely empathise with the different standards around carbon calculators. I think that's why we built one into compliance chain, and that's not a sell. It's just the point that I think in order to kind of get government buy-in to a standardised form, we've had to bring along some academic boffins with us. So we've teamed up with the University of Cambridge, who are helping us in terms of input into our carbon calculator, and then the data's being fed back into it. So every time the carbon calculator is used on a project, we can try and keep the standardised format of what their outputs are.
Yeah, Dan and I were at a meeting. Sorry, Dan and I were at a meeting with Build UK only recently, and that difference in approach has been recognised, and there is some intent to actually join us all up. The early days, yeah, but yeah, positive signs. Yeah.
I just want to talk about safety, just for a couple of minutes, in terms of the Building Safety Act, which is, you know, hot off the press, coming soon, half implemented, half not implemented. I just want to know about kind of what you're doing to kind of upskill your current supply chain or work with your new incumbents to ensure that they meet the requirements of the new Building Safety Act.
So telco stuff. And yeah, it's very relevant. So it was on the tip of my tongue at the start when we touched about new challenges. So yeah, there's a lot to the Building Safety Act, of multiple sort of courses. There's a lot of again, some of to quote some of the boffins within BAM are really trying to analyse what we currently are aware of. There's still a lot of information, legislation to follow. Focus on areas where we can make a difference. Some of the, I mean, I'm currently sort of looking at that competency of operatives, competency of management, right through from design, and just as something as straightforward as the CSCS and the change from industry accreditation. And that challenge that is in the near future that's already been set, whereby the CSCS cards will no longer be accepting the grandfather rights. So tried and tested skilled operative that has no qualifications would need to sort of get the required competency level approved by CSCS. So yeah, so much to unfold and unravel with the Building Safety Act. I think it's we have to sort of look at each portion as in when it comes. And every time I do sit through a presentation, I learn something new. Whether that's to do with there's going to be some benefits, I think, for some of the work we do in procurement and product selection. That selection of products needs to be a lot sooner in the build process, so that will help with a demand planning, understanding of requirements as a business. And so yeah, I've gone around, I've skirted around a couple of the subjects that are linked to the Building Safety Act, but we might need another 2 or 3 hours with some of the specialists to really unravel it. So I don't know if yes.
Yes, it's a major change and challenge for the business, or for the industry rather. We spent a fair bit of time as a leading player really getting an understanding of what we need to do, both immediately but then in the longer term, because I think it's going to actually grow. In many ways, the industry can't be proud of some of the quality it produces. So I think it's going to improve quality right throughout the operations of what we do. So we're focusing at the moment on how we're going to respond to it. There's a lot of effort being put into upskilling our people. But I think in many ways, in terms of procurement, it's actually going to drive what I see as best practice anyway. It's going to drive early engagement. It's going to drive compliance with specifications and make it harder to make change later on, and possible derogations. And it's going to increase focus on competency, both of the companies that we work with and the individuals working within those businesses. So it's just going to raise quality levels, I think, right across the supply chain, so which can't be a bad thing.
Good. Just in terms of obviously a number of people on the call probably don't work for BAM or work very little for BAM or work very little for Kier, and that's why they've joined the call, because they want to understand how to obviously make an impact and get a foot into work with principal contractors. We spoke already, which has been great around you know, Gerard's offered to key contacts in each regions. Dan's talked about registering to make sure that you're on the filling the form through the link, so that you're on the radar of BAM. We talked about then how you can then, once you're on the radar, what sets you apart from the competition in terms of them opportunities. And I quite like what's come out of this in terms of the bill of quants thing, in terms of don't just submit a bill of quants, let's submit some more. And if you take all the stuff that's come out of this call, well, someone built your perfect tender pack, hasn't it? You've got your bill of quants, but then you've got a little bit on social value support, a little bit on sustainability support, a little bit in terms of responding and how to support with the Building Safety Act and compliance around the Building Safety Act. And then the last one, I suppose, is case study. Is to show experience, relevant demonstrable experience of delivering similar schemes and to high levels of quality. I just want to finish on one question, which I'll pose to both of you, and this might be something that we've already discussed before over the currency of the last kind of 50 minutes, but it came up twice in the question set that was submitted. I think it's quite a good question. What do you envisage to be the biggest challenge for the industry right now? Eva can dive in.
So I go first. Right now, it's it's insolvencies. They were predicted to be something like 6,000 insolvencies right across the industry this year, and if you look at the latest figures, they are ticking over quite quickly. There's one or two sectors that seem to be more affected than others. So cladding, roofing, for example. Some of the second tier, third tier main contractors are suffering. And the message I've been given to the business is that you can't necessarily assume that those gaps left by those businesses will be filled, because those companies that are remaining, those companies' peers, may not have the ability or the appetite to actually hoover up some of that work that's been left behind to expand, because they may not be able to increase their borrowings, or they may not want to. The labour source can disappear quite quickly into other sectors. So and again, it just creates another round of capacity constraint. So yeah, and I think there's still some pain to be felt. As I said before, material prices are levelling out, but there's still upward pressure on labour prices. Some of the agreements that the unions reached early on in the inflation cycle have proven to be not robust enough, and so there'll be individuals coming back for more. The pain that individuals are going to feel in terms of the cost of living is not going to go away for a little while yet. So yeah, I think there's insolvencies is a big concern of ours, because things can happen very quickly as well. So we can spend a lot of time on due diligence picking a right supply chain partner, but they're impacted by other things that we're not directly aware of.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that obviously insolvencies is impacting us all, and they can be very unpredictable. You can have a partner with fantastic financial health scores and great trading history, great relationship, but a bad project whereby a main contractor with a big debt and the sort of domino effect really, and the ripples that can cause across the supply chain, and that can then have an impact on the project. And just again, facades in particular is an area where we're really looking to sort of do due diligence plus 10 and it's trying to understand what that is and how we can try and prevent that. I don't think I've got a solution. I'll be knocking on Gerard's door, seeing if he has yet. But
well, it's a challenge, because the information you can get on an individual is greater than you can get on a business, because it's largely historical, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so things can change very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, just with regards to when we do look upstream and opportunities, I imagine Kier's a healthy sort of workload ahead, pipeline moving forward for BAM, and again, similar business tier ones. We are seeing lots of public sector opportunities, some private sector clients that perhaps have been a bit quieter now are starting to sort of come back to us with projects that might have been put on hold due to particularly steel 12 months ago. They might now be sort of re-engaging. So the work's there and the opportunities there. I've been asked recently by the framework team, have we got capacity in the supply chain to deliver some of these projects? Which I instantly said, well, if you're not, it all comes down to sort of those lead-in periods. If you drop £500 million for projects and we need to start steel on site next week, then no, probably not. But if we're realistic in our lead-in periods and our programs and our costs, then the supply chain can adapt. But that will involve that collaboration. It'll involve forward thinking. It'll involve clients wanting to sort of work together as a supply chain community.
And I think that's key. I think that's the message that's come across literally every 5 minutes of this discussion, really, around collaboration. If there was the one key word that came out of this discussion, it was that in order to get over some of these hurdles, whether that be social sustainability in terms of environmental, the Building Safety Act, inflation, pricing, it will only happen with collaboration. So thank you, Dan. Thank you, Gerard. It was really insightful. I really enjoyed it. Hope people on the call enjoyed having that conversation and listening in. And yeah, thanks again, and hopefully see you all again soon. Thanks.
No, thank you. Cheers,
Thank you.
Robbie. Cheers, Gerard. Cheers all.
Thanks. Yeah.